2020 was a game changer for PDRF, with both the Philippines and the globe being plunged into a plethora of crises unlike any that had been seen before. As usual, when the going got tough, PDRF and its network quickly stepped up. While the COVID-19 pandemic wrought havoc on all of society, PDRF rallied the resources, logistics, and coordination capabilities of the private sector to continue strengthening the resilience of communities all over the country. From distributing food packs and personal protective equipment to delivering digital solutions for education and business, from testing and tracing COVID-19 cases to supporting the government in vaccinating the country, the PDRF network's response to the pandemic helps the hardest hit by the crisis to bounce forward to the new normal. Each project responded to a specific need identified during the early stages of the pandemic, and PDRF's close work with the government and private sector continues to address all aspects of the fight against COVID-19. 10 years strong, and PDRF shows no signs of slowing down. From piloting innovations to working to become one of the first ISO-certified nonprofits in the world, PDRF continues to help a forever-changing world. The organization is more committed to developing the disaster management capabilities of its member companies, partner communities, and institutions by providing sustainable, impactful, and innovative programs anchored on the whole of society approach. PDRF believes that it is only when we work together that we can weather all the world's storms. This is the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, building a stronger and more resilient Philippines.
The globe has truly gone beyond telco. We innovate to uplift the lives of Filipinos with compassion, care, and kindness. Driven by our vision and purpose, we address problems of our customers in an inclusive manner that impacts the whole country. We bring together customer-centric innovations into a frictionless digital ecosystem built on a reliable network and supported by genuine caring for our customers. We see this in life-enabling and life-sustaining solutions in education, health, finance, leisurettainment, productivity, business, and digital readiness and security that empower people to live healthier, safer, and richer lives in a progressive digital nation. So, today, we are more than a telco. We are a digital solutions platform. We are the Globe Group.
Aboitiz Power powers progress in the lives of every Filipino every day. We power your homes, your businesses, and your communities in a reliable, cost-efficient, and sustainable way. Over the last century, we have been at the forefront of our country's energy transformation, reimagining sustainability and constantly powering a sustained and inclusive economic growth for our nation. Every day, we will keep the lights on, and every day, we are a step closer to a better future with Aboitiz Power.
– 2020 was a game changer for PDRF, with both the Philippines and the globe being plunged into a plethora of crises unlike any that had been seen before. As usual, when the going got tough, PDRF and its network quickly stepped up. While the COVID-19 pandemic wrought havoc on all of society, PDRF rallied the resources, logistics, and coordination capabilities of the private sector to continue strengthening the resilience of communities all over the country. From distributing food packs and personal protective equipment to delivering digital solutions for education and business, from testing and tracing COVID-19 cases to supporting the government in vaccinating the country, The PDRF network's response to the pandemic helps the hardest hit by the crisis to bounce forward to the new normal. Each project responded to a specific need identified during the early stages of the pandemic, and PDRF's close work with the government and private sector continues to address all aspects of the fight against COVID-19. 10 years strong, and PDRF shows no signs of slowing down. From piloting innovations to working to become one of the first ISO-certified nonprofits in the world, PDRF continues to help a forever-changing world. The organization is more committed to developing the disaster management capabilities of its member companies, partner communities, and institutions by providing sustainable, impactful, and innovative programs anchored on the whole of society approach. PDRF believes that it is only when we work together that we can weather all the world's storms. This is the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, building a stronger and more resilient Philippines. "2020 was a game changer for PDRF, with both the Philippines and the globe being plunged into a plethora of crises unlike any that had been seen before. As usual, when the going got tough, PDRF and its network quickly stepped up. While the COVID-19 pandemic wrought havoc on all of society, PDRF rallied the resources, logistics, and coordination capabilities of the private sector to continue strengthening the resilience of communities all over the country. From distributing food packs and personal protective equipment to delivering digital solutions for education and business, from testing and tracing COVID-19 cases to supporting the government in vaccinating the country, the PDRF network's response to the pandemic helps the hardest hit by the crisis to bounce forward to the new normal. Each project responded to a specific need identified during the early stages of the pandemic, and PDRF's close work with the government and private sector continues to address all aspects of the fight against COVID-19. 10 years strong, and PDRF shows no signs of slowing down. From piloting innovations to working to become one of the first ISO-certified nonprofits in the world, PDRF continues to help a forever-changing world. The organization is more committed to developing the disaster management capabilities.
It was once all about the race. If you weren't ahead, you were out of the game. But when everything stopped, we saw the chance to change the game and begin a new path. This time, the bottom line won't be our finish line. This time, we'll chase investments whose real interest is care. This time, every step we take doesn't just change the world, but protects it. This time, our tech advancements will propel human betterment. This time, we will run the longer race, because the most rewarding pursuit is leaving a world greater than what it is.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for calling Consulta MD. This is Dr. Tan speaking. May I know who's on the line, please? Yes, ako po. Ako na po ang doktor. Once you press 1, doktor na po ang kausap niyo. Hi, Carla. How can I help you again today? No, don't worry. You can consult us as often as you want. Unlimited ang Consulta MD. Hi, Carla. Yes, ship ko pa rin. Ganito kami ka-dedicated. No problem. You can call anytime, 24/7 naman kami. Yeah, don't worry, we're always here for you. Get 1 year of Consulta MD for only 499 pesos. I-consulta mo na yan. Download the app now.
Good afternoon, mayors, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our second Liveable Cities Lab for this year. Our topic today will be the road to resilience, preparing our communities for natural disasters. Presented together with the League of Cities, in partnership with Globe Telecom and the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation. The recent experience with Supertyphoon Odette, or international name Rai, illustrates the need for more resiliency measures across the country. Odette knocked out power, telecommunications, water, and fuel supply, aside from destroying homes and buildings. More than a month after it made landfall, actually multiple landfalls in the Philippines, relief operations for food, water, and hygiene kits are still ongoing in some places, while early recovery and rebuilding need to start in earnest. The recovery could take months. Our Livable Cities Lab today will address what steps to take to prepare for and build resilience against similar storms in the future or in other parts of the country. How can we keep important lifeline utilities like power, telecommunications, and water available even in times of disaster? What remedial measures can be pre-positioned ahead of a natural disaster striking? And what facilities can be built and installed in a durable manner so that they can remain operational even after a disaster? We have brought together a set of humanitarian and utility experts to address short and long-term measures for building basic service resilience in Odette-affected and other areas of the country. Our speakers today include Veronica Gabaldon, Executive Director of Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, or PDRF, Anton Perdices, Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Aboitiz Power Distribution Utilities, Ronaldo Padua, Vice President and Head of Water Supply Operations of Maynilad Water Services, and Rofil Magto, Communications Manager of Globe Telecom. We look forward to your participation in today's event and to receiving a lot of your questions during our open forum and also over the Q&A box. Now, let me turn you over to Sui Suarez to discuss some of the house rules and safety reminders. Sui is one of our co-founders and core team members of Livable Cities Philippines. He's an energy industry professional with 25 years of experience in communications, corporate social responsibility, commercial oil products businesses, and project management at Shell. His most recent roles were in corporate external relations for Shell International, where he led the global communications campaign on the future of energy, and in the Shell scenario team, where he managed external facing activities and channels. Sui has now since transferred from Shell and moved on to Aboitiz Power, but still remains with us very active in the Livable Cities Challenge. So let us now all turn you over to Sui. Sui, over to you.
Thanks, Bill, for the kind introduction. Before we begin our Livable Cities Lab on the road to resilience, let us review a few safety reminders. First, be aware of your surroundings while the webinar is ongoing, in case you need to stop due to an emergency. And second, always stay safe and practice social distancing if you are out of your home. Furthermore, this webinar will be recorded and will be available on the Livable Cities Facebook page. Questions may be asked in the Zoom Q&A chat box, which includes a feature that allows the audience to vote on questions posted by others, simply by clicking on the thumbs up icon next to the question. Some of these will be answered directly by our speakers or their staff in the chat box, while other questions may be parked for later and taken up at the open forum. If you're joining the webinar on Facebook Live, you may place your questions in the comment section of FB. At the end of the webinar, we invite you to please fill up our feedback survey. Your response will help us improve our Liveable Cities Lab series, and you may also get a certificate of participation by answering the corresponding question in the survey. Currently, we have about 260, or 260 or so attendees on Zoom and Facebook Live. So, in behalf of the team, I thank you for spending your afternoon with us at the Liveable Cities Lab. To get the program going, we'd like to ask a couple of poll questions before we begin. So, uh, we'd like to inform the participants that the identity of the poll participants are confidential and it is not gathered, it does not gather any personal information. So the first question is, and it'll pop up in your screen, no? Where are you joining us from? So the choices are Metro Manila, rest of Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. So you just click one of those tick boxes and we will see where people are today, no, this afternoon. So let's see, give you a few more seconds there. Let's see where is everybody today. Aha, so about 29% from Metro Manila, rest of Luzon 41%. Good, it's about 60, 70% there, and about equal mix, 14% and 17% from Visayas and Mindanao. So thank you everyone. Magandang hapon, maayong buntag sa inyong lahat. Thank you for being with us today. I have another poll question. Let's ask another poll question. This question is about related to today's topic. No? According to the Department of Energy, how much is the estimated damage caused by Typhoon Odette? Okay. So how much is the estimated damage caused of Typhoon Odette? So there are four choices. Number one, 1 billion. Letter A, 1 billion. Letter B, 2 billion. Letter C, 3 billion. Letter D, more than 3 billion. Okay, again, you just pick one of those boxes. Let's see, a rough estimate lang if you could try to, get a figure in your head. Okay, let's see. Oh, half, 50% said more than 3 billion. The rest, 19%, almost equally, 3 billion, 2 billion, 1 billion. So the answer is letter D, more than 3 billion. According to the Department of Energy, as of January 17, 1 month after Typhoon Odette struck, the estimated damage at that point in time was 3.4 billion pesos. No? So that is the extent of the damage to power. Our final poll question is, again, related to our topic today. How much is the estimated damage cost of the Typhoon Odette in agricultural commodities and crops? Okay, this time, now how much is the estimated damage cost of the Typhoon Odette? This time naman on agricultural crops. No? So the choices are 8 billion, 10 billion, 11 billion, or 13 billion. Okay. Ang sagot, 36% said 13 billion, 11% 11 billion, and then the rest, less than that. So the answer is 13 billion. As of January 20, 1 week ago, the Department of Agriculture reported that Typhoon Odette wiped out a total of 13.3 billion pesos worth of agricultural goods, with more than 462,000 hectares of agricultural areas damaged, affecting more than 500,000 farmers and fisherfolk. So I hope to thank you everyone for answering those poll questions, and I hope that helps set up today's conversation. And now I turn you back to Bill to introduce our speakers and to get our conversation going. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you, Sui. Okay, so that sets the context of where we are in terms of the impact of Odette. 13 billion in a little over 13 billion in agricultural losses and over 3 billion in power and energy losses. That is still not as much as Super Typhoon Yolanda several years ago, but still it's quite a significant amount, especially considering that some of the losses were felt in very, very extremely poor regions or islands or provinces. So let's get today's discussion started. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to focus on the lifeline utilities, basically power and light, telecommunications, and water. So to kick off the seminar today, to give us a broad overview, I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Veronica Gabaldon. Veron is the Executive Director of PDRF for the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation. She leads the strategic direction, programs, and administration of the organization towards the achievement of PDRF's vision to build resilient businesses and communities across the country. Recognized as one of the active women leaders in the DRR community in the country, she led the design, launch, and operation of the country's only private sector-led operations center in Clark, Pampanga. As a strong advocate of the way private sector engages before and during crisis, she has been active in the Connecting Business Initiative platform of United Nations, or UN OCHA, and the UNDP, where she shares her expertise and experiences. I've invited Veron to come today to give us an overview of the impact of Super Typhoon Odette versus other storms and updates on the relief and recovery efforts. Let's please all welcome Veron Gabaldon.
Thank you, Bill, and good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon. And for this afternoon, I would like to focus particularly on the impact and challenges of Typhoon Odette, or international name Rai, and comparing this storm with 2013's Typhoon Yolanda, and how we can learn from both to build resilience in our communities. First, a little bit about our organization. PDRF was established in 2009 as an alliance of businesses dedicated to building the disaster management capabilities of the private sector in the country. And we are a DRR-focused organization, nonprofit, which provides a platform for cooperation among government and non-government organizations in carrying out our initiatives and plans that ultimately make a positive and lasting impact. So to begin, the next slide will show you the impact of the tropical cyclone or Typhoon Odette, as we call it. And this is the 15th tropical cyclone to hit the Philippines in 2021. And this is also the deadliest storm for that year. Odette entered the Philippine area of responsibility on December 14 and has left a trail of destruction in its wake, bringing torrential rains, violent winds, landslides, and storm surges. Odette made 9 landfalls in the provinces of Surigao del Norte, Dinagat Islands, Southern Leyte, Bohol, Cebu, Negros Oriental, and Palawan before exiting in the West Philippine Sea. The super typhoon damaged houses and roads, tore down power lines, destroyed trees and crops, and smashed fishing boats to pieces. The government declared a state of calamity in 6 regions. Next slide, please. This slide will show you the timeline of activities in our organization and with the private sector, the network. And as early as early December. Sorry, my internet is kind of spotty. All right, am I heard?
Yes, Ron. We lost you just before the prior slide.
All right. Okay. All right. So let me start with this slide. So in this slide, you will see our timeline, and that 48 hours prior to the landform, we were able to inform our network about the forecast, what to expect, and map the preparations of the private sector for the typhoon. These help the network efficiently mobilize their resources to respond. So we deployed teams to southern Leyte, Cebu, Surigao, and Siargao and Dinagat Islands to efficiently coordinate relief efforts. These teams help distribute ready-to-eat meals, drinking water, and hygiene kits. PDRF also coordinated with local airlines to provide logistic support for humanitarian response, including the transport of medicines and medical teams to respond to a flu outbreak in Siargao and Dinagat Islands. So, as government and humanitarian organizations focuses on supplying consumables, PLD or PDRF complemented this by providing long-term use items such as solar charging stations, water filters, generator sets, and building materials to repair damaged houses and help prepare communities for future disasters. And also, we are now starting to shift our activities from response to early recovery, focusing on improving livelihood, water and sanitation, and infrastructure. For livelihood, activities are planned for the agricultural, fisher folk, and micro, small, medium enterprises sectors. WASH initiatives include the repair of water systems. Infrastructure activities include the construction and repair of evacuation centers, health centers, schools, and the homes. There was an overwhelming amount of response. Next slide, please, there. Both in-kind and monetary from the private sector. Notable was the support to critical lifelines. Meralco, NGCP, and Aboitiz provided assessment and restoration teams in Bohol, Cebu, Leyte, Samar, and Negros Occidental. We deployed 155 gensets, mobile treatment plants, as well as drinking water in affected areas. Our telco members also provided libreng tawag, charging stations, in several areas. All these actions were documented and were included in the humanitarian needs and priorities documents of the UN OCHA. Next slide, you will see, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the private organizations whose logos appear in this slide for their continuous support at this point with the Odette response. We would particularly like to highlight the contributions of the logistics partners whose help has been critical in delivering relief to the areas, whether they are linemen, food packs, gensets, mobile treatment plants, and also trucks from Meralco. This has been a testimony to the private sector capability and willingness to provide aid and to support the ongoing relief and recovery efforts of the government and humanitarian organizations. Next slide. Odette is the biggest storm in recent memory in comparison to previous typhoons like Raleigh, Ulysses of 2020, Zisoy of 2019, and the closest we have as a comparison is Supertyphoon Yolanda of 2013. Both had made multiple landfalls over the provinces in Visayas and crossed the sea multiple times, allowing them to maintain their relative strength as they traverse the country. While Yolanda may have affected a larger population in terms of damaged houses, Odette takes the lead. Due to our experience in past typhoons, preemptive evacuation was key in lowering the casualties. The next slide would be a comparative analysis or comparison, numerical comparison of the massive impacts of Yolanda and Odette, particularly with our lifeline. So there were massive impacts on power over the affected provinces. Communications were cut even at the regional level. Water supply that was dependent on deep wells failed both times. Damaged or inoperable electric or mechanical pumps could not provide enough water to the communities. For Yolanda, in particular, there was the issue of saltwater intrusion in the islands contaminating the supply of potable water. And on this table, please note the monetary values of damages for Odette is just for infrastructure and agriculture. As weather disturbances become more stronger and devastating, the question we probably need to ask ourselves is if there's another shift that we need to do in terms of disaster management and look into building disaster resilience. Resilience would mean the ability of a certain area or community or institution to absorb disturbance while still being able to continue functioning or keeping the community safe. The important question, I guess, is how and where to start. Next slide. Perhaps this next slide will give us an idea. Let me show you the usual being fulfilled by the private sector. We are oftentimes asked for logistics support, cargo space and passenger seats, trucking, emergency power, generator set, fuel provision, emergency telco support, food and non-food relief allocations and distributions, and search and rescue coordination. So in this recent, as far as logistics is very critical, okay? So the recent, in the Odette, we again, the issue of the Matnog port again surfaced as we experienced a huge obstacle delay in Matnog port. So the next slide, and this will be my last slide already, I would like to conclude with a simple list of recommendations for different stakeholders when it comes to building resilience. Number one is pre-agreements at the regional and city level, so that not all resources will be coming from the national capital region. Anticipatory action, prepositioning of emergency assets like generator sets, emergency communications, and then let's look into resilient critical infrastructure so that wala nang nasisirang evacuation centers and logistics will be available. Resilient lifeline utilities, and we're happy that we have representatives from power, water, and telecoms during this in this afternoon's discussion. So I look forward to a lively discussion and learning this afternoon, and together let's learn ways to build disaster resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Veron, for the overview and the comparison between Odette and Haiyan, or Yolanda, and the other storms. So you are correct. You know, we're kind of at the stage where, while we need very quick relief, we need to anticipate what the problems will be. We need to preposition, and we need to build infrastructure which is going to be quite durable and resilient to withstand the type of impact that we expect in these areas. And because of climate change, we should continue to expect. Actually, you mentioned 15 storms last year, which is a bit on the low side for the Philippines, because we know we've been known to hit between 20 as much as 25 storms sometimes in a year. No, so imagine we only went until letter O, when in other years we've gone up to letter Y and letter U. So that'll give an idea in the audience, you know, how many storms we would get in a year. So let's go to the first critical utility that needs to be, you know, made durable, and a service which needs to be restored immediately, that of power. And what we saw in Odette was that, you know, even big cities like Cebu were affected, and entire islands like Bohol, Siargao, Dinagat had no service across the island. So this is really a very, very big problem for people. So today we're fortunate to have a major utility distribution business from Aboitiz with us today, represented by Anton Perdices, and they are one of their utility groups, besides electric, was at the forefront of restoring power services in Cebu, and also assisting in Bohol, I believe. No, so Anton is currently the Senior Vice President and the Chief Operating Officer of Aboitiz Power Distribution Utilities, and the Chairman and President of Aboitiz Construction. Prior to this, he worked as Chief Operating Officer of Visayan Electric Company, or VECO. He's an executive professional with more than 15 years of hands-on, progressive, and diverse experience, with a primary focus on people and project management for different Fortune 500 companies in the electric distribution, construction, healthcare, and telecommunications industry. We are particularly happy to have Anton speak to us today about their direct experience in restoring power after Odette, and what other lessons and insights they may have picked up or learned from that experience and other earlier experiences. Over to you, Anton.
Hello, Bill. To you and the Liveable Cities Philippines team, my fellow panelists, and to everyone tuning in, good afternoon. I'd like to thank the organizers of this event for giving us the opportunity to share how Visayan Electric is restoring power to its franchise area following Supertyphoon Odette, as well as how Aboitiz Power's distribution utilities plan to move forward after the calamity. Before I begin, allow me to quickly introduce Aboitiz Power and Visayan Electric. Aboitiz Power is the holding company for the Aboitiz Group's investment in power generation, distribution, and retail electricity services. We are one of the largest power producers in the Philippines with a balanced portfolio of assets across the country. We are a major producer of clean energy, our brand for clean and renewable energy with several hydroelectric, geothermal, and solar power generation facilities. Together with our joint venture partners, we have the largest installed capacity of renewable energy in the Philippines. We also have the thermal power plants in our portfolio to support the country's baseload and peak energy demands. Aboitiz Power also owns distribution utilities that operate in high-growth areas in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, including the country's second and third largest private DUs. The second largest private DU in the country happens to be Visayan Electric, which serves the cities of Cebu, Mandaue, Talisay, Naga, and 4 municipalities of the greater part of Metro Cebu, being Liloan, Consolacion, Minglanilla, and San Fernando. Its franchise service has an estimated population of 1.73 million people and covers an area of about 674 square kilometers, 6% larger than Metro Manila. As you all know, Typhoon Odette made landfall in the southern Cebu on the evening of December 16, 2021. During that time, practically our entire franchise area was affected by the strongest typhoon to hit the province since Ruping in November 1990. As much as we wanted to re-energize our franchise area right away, the magnitude of damage caused by the typhoon, which included many toppled poles, broken lines, and lack of power from the grid, prevented us from doing so. To date, we have assessed more than 2,500 damaged poles, around 450 broken distribution transformers, and over 330 circuit kilometers of downed power lines. To illustrate the scale of this distribution asset on the ground, excuse me, Visayan Electric has 8,990 kilometers of wires and cables within its franchise area. When stretched end to end, this is enough to span from the city of Apari in Cagayan all the way down to General Santos in Mindanao 4 times over. At the onset of re-energization, we prioritized the repair of the backbone of our system before moving on to key facilities within Cebu City. Excuse me. Our oil-fired power plant, operated by Cebu Private Power Corporation, or CPPC, played a critical role in restoring power to vital institutions during the days of recovery. CPPC went online last December 18 to serve the franchise, helping us prioritize the energization of hospitals, water providers, and other vital institutions in Cebu. CPPC was the first source of power in Cebu since the main transmission lines were down and power was not flowing into the city from the general facilities. When CPPC was operated, power was sent to the area of Vicente Soto Memorial Medical Center, the largest government-owned hospital and vaccine storage facility in the city. Because CPPC is embedded in the utilities franchise area, the power it produces does not pass through transmission lines, but rather goes straight to the circuits and customers. We would have not reached the great progress in restoring power to Cebu City today if it were not for the linemen and all other frontliners in the industry's support that we receive. As of last week, we had around 280 additional linemen from distribution utilities and electric cooperatives from other parts of the country, augmenting our 308-strong Visayan Electric workforce currently on the ground. On top of this, we also had local engineering companies that helped in the power restoration efforts. As of today, power consumption with the Visayan Electric franchise area has reached 437.71 megawatts, which is 88% of the pre-Odette power consumption of 495 megawatts. We are pleased to report that 100% of our substations 5% of our combined 23 kV and 69 kV lines have been energized. We estimate to have restored power to 411,579 customers, or 86.8% of the total 474,182 customers within our franchise area. Given the significant restoration progress we have made in recent days, we continue to invest in more manpower and equipment to restore power to the rest of our franchise area as soon as time possible, with the hardest to reach areas to finally get energy. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our linemen who have been working tirelessly since last month, as well as all the other DUs and ECs that have extended a helping hand in these past weeks. I would also like to express profound gratitude to the leaders, friends, and colleagues in local businesses, community organizations, and of course, our local government. Their trust, confidence, and understanding provides us the much needed support to allow us to do what we need to be done. Daghan kaayog salamat. However, there are still some key challenges that we are facing now that we are down to the last stretch. A few pockets in urban areas still need power, which will require house-to-house visits, specific troubleshooting, and addressing load side or customer issues or damage to customers' electrical systems. As we move to the outskirts of our franchise area, access to trucks and heavy equipment will become more limited. Work will be slower and more labor-intensive. Given that these are remote locations, we will need local coordination and help. Some linemen from our augmentation force have already left Cebu. With all 86 personnel from Meralco having already flown out from the province over the weekend, 33 of them going to Surigao and Siargao, while the remaining 53 returned to Manila. On a positive note, 20 more linemen from Iloilo's electric distribution utility, arrived in Cebu on Monday last week, and we also welcomed 26 additional people from Luzon who arrived on Friday also last week. Odette was a sobering experience for all of us. We recognize the gaps that need to be filled and acknowledge that there's much to be done. Our goal now is to make sure that we build more resilient power systems moving forward. We understand the public clamor to move utility lines underground. As a matter of fact, we're already doing this for distribution lines in the cities of Cebu and Davao. We're open to discussions on expanding these projects to more parts of our franchise area, cognizant that there's also non-technical challenges to overcome, such as traffic, localized distribution, and the need for a robust future city planning. Given the required investment for underground distribution systems, we are willing to explore mechanisms to make this commercially viable. This experience also highlighted the importance of embedded generation within a distribution utilities franchise area, like how helpful CPPC was in the aftermath of the typhoon. With embedded generation facilities, power can be restored to the city even while down transmission lines are being repaired. I also want to stress the role that industry support and collaboration plays during times of natural disasters. I am just in awe of how the Bayanihan spirit manifests itself in adversity. We need more avenues for organizations to share best practices in disaster response, contribute tools and equipment, and even manpower and technical expertise. When a natural disaster like Typhoon Odette strikes with severity that no single corporation can handle, collaboration really is the way to go. Finally, Design Electric was able to leverage the structure and scale of Aboitiz Power as a diverse and vertically integrated group of companies. Personnel from our other DUs, Davao Light, Cotabato Light, and the Enerzone groups were first on site, dispatched from their bases even before Typhoon Odette struck. Synergies with our power generation business, specifically with CPPC's embedded power generation capability, was a key feature in our power restoration efforts. Technical expertise and portfolio strength cuts across the whole group. If there's one major takeaway from all this, It's that there is really strength in synergy. From initial response up until today, we continue to work together to see results that are more effective if we worked alone. We have a long way to go before we can have truly resilient power systems, especially against the backdrop of more severe weather incidents like this recent typhoon. But we will get there. There has to be a balance between the responsibilities of the government, private sector, and even consumers to make this system work. On the side of the public sector, there has to be a clear roadmap and policy guide rails towards a more resilient energy system, compliance, support, and innovation from the private sector, as well as cooperation and buy-in from civil society. If we constantly work together, not only are we building a more resilient power system, we're also building a resilient future for all. Thank you very much, and good afternoon once again.
Thank you very much, Anton, for the presentation. And I like your emphasis on the synergy and the collaboration. And I think you illustrated it well, when you say that VECO and Meralco and More Power and all the other groups moved around from area to area to help restore services and continue to help to restore services in other places like Siargao and Dinagat. It really was an overwhelming challenge, I guess, for any single corporation. So I think we needed to put a lot of resources together to get this done. I also like your reference to the plans to move power lines underground. I think that's something that is gaining popularity and a lot more attention these days, and something that we need to move into in the future. But I understand, of course, there are many problems. The non-technical side of things that we need to address, including city planning and I guess access and right of ways that need to be granted by different LGUs. So you'll have your work cut out for you. But thanks for that presentation. Now let's move on to our next topic, that of water. So in the experience of PDRF, three of the most critical items asked for immediately in the aftermath of a disaster are always power, water, and telecommunications. So these are the three groups that we have today. And so this next presentation, we'd like to focus on water. So critical, not only for because people need drinking water, but water is also essential for hygiene and sanitation and for maintaining health in calamity-stricken areas. So I'd like to now invite Mr. Ronaldo Padua of Maynilad Services to speak. Mr. Padua has more than 20 years of experience in the water industry in both the technical and the business side of things. He's a civil engineer by profession and also a certified life coach. He is currently Maynilad's VP and head of Water Supply Operations Division, responsible in the management of operations and maintenance of facilities from source to treatment to distribution, ensuring potable water is delivered to customers tapped 24/7. Maynilad has been an invaluable partner, one of many that we have on the PDRF side of things that respond every time without fail to emergency situations where water services need to be restored. So it's my pleasure to welcome to the Liveable Cities Lab today to speak about the challenge of restoring water services in time of a disaster. Let's please welcome Mr. Ronaldo Padua.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bill. So please allow me to share my screen. Okay. Maginhawang hapon sa inyong lahat as we say it here in Maynilad. It is my privilege to share with all of you Maynilad's water supply operations story and how we've helped the victims of Typhoon Odette in our kababayans in Visayas and Mindanao. Okay. First, please allow me to introduce Maynilad. It's the largest water company in terms of customer base in the Philippines and has an exclusive rights to provide water and wastewater services in the west zone of Metro Manila. The west zone of Metro Manila was privatized and was gotten by the current owner of Maynilad in year 2007. So it's now being managed by Maynilad Water Holdings Company, which is owned by Metro Pacific Investment Corporation, DMCI Holdings Incorporated, and Maruben Corporation. Maybe as we all know, we had a new concession agreement that was signed by last May 2021. And as written in the concession agreement, Maynilad is no longer just an agent and contractor of MWSS, but also a public utility. And to strengthen this, we need to formalize our classification as public utility. Maynilad also applied for our own franchise from the Congress, so which was eventually signed early this year. With the continuing demand of our service area, the security and stability of long-term franchise will give Maynilad the strength and ability to invest in water infrastructure that the country needs. Just a snapshot of the facilities that we are operating within the Maynilad system for us to be able to deliver water to more than 1.5 million of our customers, which covers about more than 7,000 kilometer pipelines and 4 major water treatment plants and different pump stations and reservoirs. Currently, we are drawing our raw water from majority from main source, which is Angat Dam, more than 90% of our water supply requirement. And the other less than 10% comes from Laguna Lake, which Maynilad started utilizing in 2010. So we are the first to utilize this lake as a major source of water supply in Metro Manila. Unlike Boitis, we don't have any physical presence in the affected areas of Typhoon Odette, but normally in similar incidences in the past, we are always being called by the government to help immediately restore water supply system in the affected areas. Just to give a brief background how things are being done within a water company. Normally, the system is subdivided into 3 major parts. First is the water source, and then the water treatment facilities and the water distribution. So in our case, we do have 2 water sources, Angat Dam and Laguna Lake. And just to give emphasis that water industry is not a standalone industry. We, in order for us to be able to operate our system, we need this. I have enumerated in this slide some of the things or the resources that we need to ensure to be available for us to be able to distribute water to our customers. Say, for example, for water source, for water treatment and distribution, we need the availability of electricity and energy for us to be able to run all the facilities that we have in the water system that we have. And since Maynilad is also operating remotely some of our facilities, communication equipment is also vital in our operation. As we all know, last December, Typhoon Odette has left major damage on areas in Visayas and Mindanao, and one of the challenges brought by this is the lack of potable drinking water. This situation again calls the attention of Maynilad to extend assistance by providing mobile treatment facilities that could treat the available water source that they have in the area and to convert this into drinkable water. So when we were called by the government, we immediately mobilized our team of engineers and chemists to prepare our readily available mobile treatment plants for deployment in the affected areas. You can see here in the pictures of our teams from assembly and testing to their transport to deployment of the treatment facility. Actually, we also had our share of problems or challenges when we deployed these mobile treatment plants to the areas in the south. For one, it's very hard for us to book for transportation facilities for us to be able to transport our equipment in Bohol, in Cebu, and Surigao. And second, our personnel are also not spared by the impact of COVID, because during the time that we are about to deploy this equipment, some of our identified personnel that should be deployed got contacted with viruses. So we need to identify some other personnel for deployment. So we deployed one mobile treatment plant in Cebu, thanks to our contact there, Attorney Veles, a counselor in Minglanilla, Cebu. We deployed our mobile treatment plant there, which could serve the drinking water requirement of about 2,000 families. We also deployed one mobile treatment plant in Abanga, Bohol, which has a capacity of 22,000 liters of potable water per day. And to continue the operations of this mobile treatment plant, we need to train the locals of basic operation and maintenance, because we also need to bring back our personnel here in Metro Manila. So as we turned over one set of MTP to the specific areas that I've mentioned, we turned over one set of mobile treatment plant, including the dosing pump, the membrane filtration system, pump gensets, and lab equipment to ensure that water quality is good for drinking. And since, as mentioned earlier, we had challenges in transporting our MTPs to the areas, what we did initially was to deliver bottled waters to affected areas, wherein we were able to deliver about 12,000 liters of bottled water in different areas in Visayas and Mindanao, plus an additional 6.5 million in cash. Sudden changes in weather patterns have become the new norm, as we all know. With this new norm come water supply issues that affect our operations in new and alarming ways. This now forces us to come up with novel and strategic approaches to water management. All of us here know that water is the single most critical resource of the well-being of people and nations. We also know that it is dwindling fast. We in the water industry, our role being the experts in this sector is to come up with long-term solutions that will impact not only our country, but our entire planet. So in our case, we are normally being affected by El Nino. In the past, this is happening, or we are experiencing it here in our Angat water source every 10 years, but it's becoming more frequent between 2 to 5 years. We are also being affected by heavy rainfall, wherein it affects the raw water quality of our water source. So for us to be able to become more resilient in our operations, which we could share now to the water company in the provinces, we need to enhance the resiliency of water operations. So going back to the illustration on a typical water distribution network of a typical water company, I've identified here some of the things that we need to do, both on the water source, on the water treatment, and the water distribution. And on top of this, we need to develop our own water safety plan for us to be able to identify critical risks and how we can be able to mitigate these identified risks. And highlighted are the things that can be done on smaller scale in our areas in the provinces. Just like before, we were tapped by Department of Science and Technology, wherein we designed and installed a small rainwater harvesting facility with a solar panel that was installed in the rural area of Bantan, Romblon. When I interviewed my staff who went to Bohol, Cebu, the common challenge that the water companies in those areas faced for them to be able to bring back the operation of their water system is the availability of power. So it's very important, as mentioned earlier, water industry or running a water system is not a standalone industry. It has to have available power source. So I think for us to be able to continue the availability of water, water companies should have alternative power sources like generators, like solar panels into their system. So overall, we need to build critical technical competencies for more resilient water operations. So the priorities of our industries are clear: ensure resilient water and wastewater operations, meet service obligations to our customers, and to protect the environment for long-term water security. Our experience in Maynilad is proof that the task ahead of us is not simple. Climate change is causing more extreme weather conditions, with strong rains and prolonged drought periods becoming the new norm. Meanwhile, a growing urban population is demanding more water. Addressing these challenges will require strength, persistence, and a whole lot of innovative thinking. So with that, maraming salamat. And if you have questions, I'd be more than willing to answer later on.
Thank you very much, Ronald, for the presentation. I think now we have a kind of a wider understanding of what a water system consists of, from the source management to the treatment to the distribution. And thank you also to Maynilad for the work that you do to restore water services. I think some people, may not appreciate the difficulties you go through by setting up mobile treatment plants, because obviously we cannot keep on sending bottled water into calamity-stricken areas. Number one, it's difficult to do. Number two, it creates a secondary problem actually of the disposal of all the bottles anyway. But the mobile treatment plant is essential, and we appreciate the difficulty in trying to transport all the equipment. It takes a lot of logistics, and here we have to help you get ships and aircraft and all, and to send people around. So thank you very much for that help. And again, like you emphasized, essentially no power, no water, because if you don't have electricity, it's difficult to really continue pumping the water. So we'll get back to you with a few more questions later on. Just a quick reminder before I move on to the next speaker, for the audience, is that we do have a Q&A box. Please feel free to type in your questions into the Q&A box. There's a mechanism by which you can actually vote for a question by liking it, and then the most popular questions will come up to the top of the box, so we know which questions to prioritize. If you're following us on Facebook, you can type your questions in on the comments section. Our staff will pick it up from there, forward it to us in the Zoom room, and we'll be able to ask the questions as well. So let's move on to our third and final speaker, and another equally important lifeline utility that we must all have, working pre-disaster, during a disaster, and immediately, of course, post-disaster. And that is that of telecommunications. And you know how it works is that obviously, without in case you're wondering sometimes why after a storm we are not getting all the information we need, or we don't have a full grasp of the gravity of the situation. Uh, Normally, in our thinking, when that happens, we're worried because that means that telecommunications has been knocked out in a region or in a province or in an area, and therefore that's why we are not getting enough information of the excuse me, of the extent of the damage in that area. So this is a very absolutely critical uh, lifeline utility we need to keep open at all times. So we're going to shift to telecommunications. And today our last speaker is going to be Rofil Magdo. Rofil is communications manager of Globe Telecom. He holds a degree in management with a major in communications technology from Ateneo, and is currently taking masters in environmental management also at Ateneo. He represents Globe's corporate communications group for Visayas and Mindanao, covering public and media relations as well as regional sustainability programs. And I must emphasize, Rofil is not some guy who is parked in some head office or headquarters looking at things from afar, but is actually in the field during disasters and immediate post-disaster periods to assess things on the ground and to help operations get moving. So he is currently speaking to us from out of town as well. Uh, so let's please welcome Rofil Magdo to tell us about telecommunications, service restoration, and the challenges that Globe faces in the field. Rofil, over to you.
Thank you, Bill. It's what you said is true. I'm actually currently here now in Southern Leyte, one of the hardest hit areas of Typhoon Odette. And in this presentation, I will be sharing with you and everyone else here our road to resilience and how we view resilience from a telecommunications perspective. So I guess I start with sustainability at Globe. As mentioned earlier, we value resilience, but we have to focus first on sustainability, which is always driven by the Globe purpose. At Globe, all our initiatives are based on our purpose. That's why we treat people right to create a globe of good. And everything, all initiatives, all our activities are based and anchored on the 10 UN Sustainable Development Goals by the UN Global Compact and the United Nations. With this sustainability, our anchor, we developed several programs which has various focus on environment, digital nation as well, which we will share with you later, care for people and how we take care of our own ka-globe, and also positive societal impact and how we make a difference in the lives of our fellow Filipino. Next slide, please. And so when we talk about sustainability, sustainability is always associated with resilience. And so I begin with a quote by saying from Rama Ramaswamy of McKinsey & Company, by saying that resilience is often cited in the context of crisis response, but its true meaning goes deeper: the proactive building of skills and capabilities to sustain people and organizations for the long haul. So when you talk about sustainability, or when you talk about resilience from a telco perspective, the first thing that comes to mind is always network formidability or network resilience, which is not always the case. Because when you speak of sustainability, of resilience, you have to talk, or you have to see it with an end-to-end perspective of serving our customers, especially from a telco industry. Hence, we talk about Globe's resiliency strategy in this current slide. So resilience for Globe is focusing on network investment, making sure that our network is formidable, our network is resilient, and of course, energy efficient to align with the UN Sustainability Development Goals and UN agenda. We also focus on digital transformation as a way of empowering our customers through digital services, which I will share with you on later on, the various mobile applications that our customers can use, even in normal times or during times of disaster. And of course, the last item under this strategy is stakeholder management, because we value very much our partnerships with our local government units or partners, and as well as our customers, our dear customers, and even non-government organizations and community partners who work very well with us in making our network and making all end-to-end sustainability strategy of Globe more resilient. Next slide, please. So as mentioned earlier, Bill, when we talk about network investment, it's always initiating, we always make sure that our investments translate to seamless connectivity. So even prior a typhoon, we ensure that our data, we get data or information from science-based data or accurate information from our different partners. We also make sure that hardware are in good shape, even prior or weeks prior there's an impending typhoon coming in or a known acts of God. We also position our network services to augment our areas wherein there's a risk of being hit by a strong typhoon, such as what happened to Odette and in 2013 Typhoon Yolanda. So we have various investments such as cell sites on wheels, tower on wheels, which can support around 3 to 5 kilometers of 2G signal. And at the same time, we also position all other equipment such as fuel and what we call GOAT or the genset on track to support these networks when it comes to disaster preparedness. And finally, the value of communication is very much important during disasters and our manpower reinforcements on standby. Next slide, please. So earlier, digital transformation, resiliency doesn't only talk about network formidability, but also how we provide value and give value to our customers by helping them with our services beyond telco. So we are offering these mobile applications, which I believe you are already very familiar with. We have the Globe One app, the GCash for your financial transactions. We have even Globe at Home app, Go Wi-Fi in more than 3,100 areas around the country. And also the beyond telco services such as health applications, mobile applications, which allows you to connect to doctors and health professionals 24/7. And of course, as mentioned by Sherifer in the chat group as well, there's this M360, which our partners from the enterprise group are offering. They have started this offer during the Typhoon Odette and are extending it even beyond, I think, beyond February 28th, which gives local government units free SMS blasts and to help them with their communication needs within their constituents. Next slide, please. So the next slide would talk about stakeholder engagement. Of course, this is very much important. And what happens is that when we talk about resiliency, we always have to involve our customers. We inform our customers proactively, making sure that they are aware of any typhoon or any earthquake that's happening. We send proactive messages via social media and partner with the NDRMC for geotagged disaster-related alerts. These are also the cell broadcasts that you encounter any time of the day when alert level has increased from alert 2 to alert level 3. And most especially, apart from informing our customers, We also value our partners on the ground who make it possible for us to implement our Care for People programs and positive societal impact. So we have several partners already present in GCash or Globe Rewards app and direct partnerships, which help us implement several programs of Globe to help our customers who are in need. In partnership with the LGU, we also work hand in hand with them to implement libreng tawag and charging stations. In case there is no connectivity in the area and no power, we provide these in collaboration with our sales team. So this is business as usual or a standard response when it comes to disaster preparedness and when it comes to no power during certain circumstances. So those are the three strategies that I mentioned about resiliency: network formidability, network investment, digital transformation, and stakeholder engagement. Now, let me walk you through in detail what happened during Odette, because as mentioned, while people were trying to escape Visayas and Mindanao, in contrast, I was on the road to Visayas to go to Cebu. So in Typhoon Odette actually entered the Philippine area of responsibility with a maximum sustained winds of 165 kph and gustiness of 205 kph. This is already enough to topple houses with light materials, made of light materials, although not as destructive as Yolanda, but not as deadly as Yolanda. But in terms of the damage, we know based on previous presentations that Odette really created havoc within, especially in Visayas, in Mindanao, including Palawan. So in terms of network damage or telco infrastructure, Cebu, Bohol, and Southern Leyte, Caraga, and Dinagat Islands were hardest hit. So there were days wherein there's no communication and for wireless services. There were actually 70 plus towers which were affected and which were heavily damaged by this typhoon. And most especially, our internet facilities or wireline connectivities were heavily affected because of multiple fiber cuts within the area. So what we did is that our engineers immediately responded, and you can see here that the Visayas and Mindanao teams have been augmented already with Luzon reinforcements from Luzon. And we could just see how risky the jobs of these engineers working 24/7 to bring back our connectivity to full capacity. So they work even at night to make sure that the connectivity from the main source to the local convergent points, to the post and to the home areas, or what we call the last mile, are connected. And then again, when we talk about the strategy that I've mentioned earlier, Odette also gave us an opportunity to do recovery, not just in terms of network restoration, but also in terms of how we communicate and how we work with our community partners on ground. So we have actually supported more than 10,000 families already in collaboration with the Ayala Group and our other partners mentioned earlier. And we have reached as far as Palawan, Visayas, and Mindanao, even in far-flung areas that are not reachable in the first few days of the typhoon. And currently, right now, we are pivoting our efforts towards recovery and rehabilitation efforts, starting with Mindanao and then followed by Visayas. Next slide, please. We also continuously engage our customers. We provide them, as mentioned earlier, communication is very vital, especially in times of disaster. So we provide them using social media channels and direct SMS straight to customers with overall network updates. And we make sure that they also receive messages regarding their bills regarding automatic rebates and bill-related disconnections, which were put on hold for a certain time because of the circumstances. And of course, as mentioned also earlier, we have implemented more than 134 libreng tawag and charging stations, which were very much helpful to our customers and to our other partners within the area. Finally, down to my last few slides. During calamities or disaster, especially with what happened to Odette, it also gave us an opportunity to use our digital platforms such as GCash, Globe Rewards, the Globe One app, for our customers to donate their unused rewards points or directly donate their GCash to certain institutions, our partner institutions that help us with the implementation on ground. So right now, we are already able to donate our data to rewards points and make sure that these reach the communities that are affected by Odette. And next slide. And finally, when we talk about connectivity, we were also hit by the typhoon, and we experienced a lot of challenges on ground. Even now, we are working on limited connectivity because of dependencies also on local power restoration. We have challenges on multiple fiber cuts, which we continuously explain to our customers on the restoration of their wireline services, and there's also a problem on the challenge on the specialized materials and because of fiber connectivity. And of course, even if these services are restored, these are affected also by ongoing road clearing by other companies, although not intentional, but we're just sharing with you some of these challenges. And just to briefly share with you that wireless connectivity is a bit easier in terms of restoration, or faster in terms of turnaround time when it comes to restoration as compared to our wireline or fiber to the home services. Because in the illustration below, there are multiple connectivities or points that needs to be fixed. So if you can just imagine from a 1 kilometer to 2 kilometer radius, even if the main cabinet is already fixed, there's also a possibility that there are multiple fiber cuts from the cabinet to the post or the post to the house. So that's why our engineers and sales force are working round the clock already and are doing task augmentation in terms of manpower to bring back our services as soon as possible. Next slide, please. So I believe that these challenges, we also value our partnerships with organizations such as local government units. In fact, if you can provide us with areas for libreng tawag and libreng charging stations during calamities, we would really appreciate it, and also extend, especially these areas, wireline right of way, so that we don't have any problems or challenges when it comes to establishing wireline services. And if you have connections, or if you work directly with a power or utility company, we would appreciate it if we work hand in hand areas immediately, especially those areas heavily affected by the typhoon. An example of this is executive order issued by the provincial government of Cebu. They help us at all telco industries, or supported by Governor Gwen, by issuing a memorandum or executive order to not further delay, to prevent any companies or external organizations to delay restoration efforts by communications industries. I guess the insight, or the key insight that we're getting from here, is that this is a never-ending process of improvement, so that we continuously assess and invest more on what we are on making our network more formidable and more resilient. Use of science-based data, and most importantly, show care and malasakit to our customers, which are in dire need for connectivity. And the rest, communications and collaboration with local government units is very much appreciated when we talk about resiliency, because we could not do this without you, and we really need as much help as we need to make this work all together. So that ends my presentation, and I hope I was able to explain our side from telco perspective. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you, Rofil. Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, I think it as I mentioned, it's so critical because when we don't hear from a region, it just tells us, when in the DRM business, it just tells us that if we don't get news, one of the things we assume is that connectivity is down, and so therefore we're not getting a true picture of what's going on. So it's so important to get telecommunications up and running, and we can see all the dependencies that you have with the power sector. Again, that's why it's so important for us to work together with that sector. Let me now proceed with the panel discussion and the open forum, and I see a number of questions in the Q&A box. So let me invite back our speakers back on screen. Veron Gabaldon for PDRF, Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation. Anton Predices for Aboitiz Power Distribution Utilities. Ronaldo Padua for Manilad. And Rofil Magto for Globe Telecom. I'd like to also invite Sui Suarez from Aboitiz Power to join me, and Dinky Von Einsedel from Assure, who is another partner of ours and a SteerCom member of the Livable Cities, to also join us on the panel discussion. So feel free to ask your questions. Okay, let me kick off with some of the questions here. This one is addressed to Anton, but I suppose maybe others, Veron, can answer this as well. Oh no, this is really for Anton. This question of the underground cables. Okay, so as you were mentioning earlier, there's been a lot of attention and calls for that shift to underground cables, including by politicians, by the way, who would like to see this happen. And you've done this in parts of Davao and Cebu. So how feasible is this? Can this be done on a nationwide scale, or at least in the most vulnerable areas or in cities? Will government have to provide some form of subsidy?
It applies to the power utility and to the telcos as well, because we are doing it as mentioned. In Cebu, for example, we started out the Sinulog route, right? We're focusing on that because we noticed every time that the Sinulog parade would happen, there'd be balloons, there'd be all kinds of stuff that would go to our wires, and there'd be automatic brownouts. So an executive order was made by the mayor, and we've been doing it a kilometer a year. To get the whole system underground, as I mentioned, 8,990 kilometers is going to take a long time and a lot of money. So there has to be some sort of government subsidy. Now, it doesn't have to be everything, right? It doesn't have to be everything. What we realized, the main culprit of poles coming down were really trees and billboards, right? So we had to really step up the game in tree trimming, right? And we do that even without the typhoons. We make it a point to make sure that we trim trees. However, we have such a vast network, and it takes time. But yeah, if we could find a way to strategically place them underground, it'll definitely help. But it will take a lot of time and it'll take a lot of money.
Thanks, Anton. Rofil, how about on Globe side, the telcos? You also mentioned you had cell towers down. Of course, not as many as electric poles, but is there a way to do away with cell towers and build stuff underground, or do you still need cell towers?
Actually, Bill, that has already been, there's already an ongoing discussion on that one to move aerial cables to underground cabling. but that requires intensive investments. So that's why, while that's still currently in discussion, it's also very beneficial if we can work together with other utility companies, power, water, power, and other services as well. The investments can be concerted in nation as well with our local governments and national government agencies. So yes, that works to our favor as well, because some of the cables are also dragged because of vehicular accidents or unintentionally dragged during construction. So that's a bit of a long-term discussion, but we hope that we are going in that direction together with other companies as well.
Thanks. Dicky, let me go to you. I mean, you're an architect, you're an urban planner. How feasible is it to set up sort of common conduits in the urban plan so that utility services like power, like telecommunications, will run using those common pathways?
Well, actually, Bill, that is already being practiced in a number of large real estate township developments. Like Ayala has done it in a number of its large real estate development projects. Because in the planning of the roadway system, the sidewalks or even the pavement itself, the roadway itself, can accommodate the underground trench where these utilities can be placed. In the case of, I think there's a subdivision in Cavite where this was done in a residential development, and the trench, which was common for all the utilities, was placed on the sidewalk. So it's a matter of pre-planning where this trunk lines are going to be, and then coordinating with the utility companies for each one to be placing whatever lines that they need to place. Now, before, I remember several years back, Meralco had issued some guidelines about underground trenches. But then the problem was that the development for not private subdivisions, but for public areas, was that the implementation by DPWH, the LGU, etc., they follow different budget timetables. And so the problem is synchronizing who is supposed to be putting in the utility at the time when you need to put it in. So that was mainly a kind of an urban management issue, I remember in those days. I don't know now whether that can still be done. I imagine it can. It's just a matter, I think, of the LGU, where the development is taking place, coming up with a system of requiring that kind of an approach and putting in the mechanism for coordinating with the different utility companies in the actual implementation.
Yeah, speaking of timing issues, I think it's really just a matter of the coordination, Dinky. I think many of us have seen examples in the provinces or even in cities where we see a road widening project, and maybe Anton can speak to this. We see a road widening project where the road is widened beautifully, but the electric pole stands exactly where it originally stood and hasn't been moved along with the road. And now it's in the middle of a lane, or in between lanes or something like this. So Anton, does this still happen?
From time to time it does, but we try as much as possible to coordinate with DPWH when they're doing it, so that we can plan ahead, because on the average it takes to erect a pole and to dress a pole half a day to a day, depending on the area. So if you're having to, 10 poles in a row, that's 10 days. So it does happen, but we try to get that resolved as soon as possible, because it really is an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, it used to be quite a common practice. Veron, I have a question for you. and this involves Pag-asa. Okay, the question is, does Pag-asa still have anything to improve on its communication protocols? I guess forecasts and warnings ahead of a storm. What can be done about coordinating something like this?
Thank you, Sir Bill. Well, yes. As far as communicating the forecast, Pag-asa is quite conservative in their forecast, and rightly so, because they have this responsibility to the public and ensure that there won't be any panic or no unnecessary alarm that will be given to the community. But I think on a per sector level, uh, I think there is an opportunity for coordinating and discussing ahead of time and analyzing different systems so that we can be better prepared. And that is what we're trying to do in PDRF, to provide the network, especially the lifeline sector, the lifeline companies, so that they will be they will have more layers of information that can help them in making decisions and ensuring the safety and also continuity of their business. So I hope that that is something that we can put in place as far as coordination mechanism is concerned with Pag-asa. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Veron. I just want to add to what Veron is saying. I'm also with PDRF as the Chief Resilience Officer, and we try to give these additional layers of information, as Veron mentioned, but we give those directly to companies, particularly, of course, the lifeline utility companies, so they can get ahead of the curve in terms of pre-positioning spare parts, materials, people even, and equipment in certain areas in the event they are needed. So it's not a public warning or public forecast that is given in the same way that Pag-asa would have to give it, but we do give it as that extra layer of caution to companies so that they can prepare, knowing that these companies will be asked to respond in the event of an emergency. So primarily, this is important, of course, for utility companies, but it's also important for us to inform logistics companies, the airline companies, the shipping companies, because we count on all those resources to be able to move the equipment that our utility companies need to move. So yeah, there's a bit of more coordination that needs to be done, but that's always something that we're working on with the government agencies. Let me go back to
Bill, I'd like to add something.
Yeah, sure, Rofil, go ahead.
Before you proceed, I like what Veron said earlier about Pag-asa as well. And actually, there's also an opportunity wherein several organizations, not just government agencies, wherein we can consolidate all necessary information, especially now that everything is mobile, everything is using mobile applications. Perhaps we can consolidate these information in the form of free APIs or application programming interface. This can be offered free to the public. These can be picked up by different developers and come up with a system wherein you have real-time data, flooding, weather data, you have earthquake from PVOX, and different other layers of information, so that we are flexible enough to create applications and know real time what's happening on the ground.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a good idea. No, because information is really so important. Without the detailed information, it's hard for us to plan. So that's a great idea, Rofil. Anton, I have a couple of questions for you. One has to do with sort of very, very remote, restoring power to very remote, far-flung places, which is, of course, going to have an impact also on their water and telecommunications at the same time. So, you can restore in a high-density urban area, but as you stretch out further and further, you mentioned you'd have problems doing that. So that's kind of one question I have: how to reach out to the far-flung areas. And then I have a separate question on which facilities do you prioritize? Because it's understood that certain areas need to be prioritized. For instance, hospitals or healthcare facilities. How do you pick and choose, and how do you determine the prioritization if you don't know the zoning so well within a city, or maybe you do know the zoning well enough that you can go straight to that sector and restore power, where hospitals are located, for instance. So how do you handle both far-flung and then healthcare facilities?
Okay, so for far-flung, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, it reaches a point where even our trucks can't get up there. So a lot of it is, believe it or not, we use carabaos to help carry the posts, right? Or people, these are smaller posts, right? Mind you, because these are houses that have one light bulb and a outlet for charging their cell phone, right? The sad truth, when we were visited by representatives of the Department of Energy, we explained to them that these far-flung areas are going to be the ones that are unfortunately going to be the last to be restored. And I was told, number one, these people are the most resilient among all of us. They've only recently got electricity, so they know how to live without it. It's not really that big of a deal, right? They don't have air conditioning. They're used to using candles, etc. at night. And the sad truth was that he also said that chances are, with the strength of this typhoon, by the time you guys get up there, they're still rebuilding their homes. So you won't be able to connect them yet, right? So it's something that we have to look at. But that's where the partnership with the local government comes in, where manpower, they can have their manpower. You don't require technical expertise. You require brute man force, right? And we've actually had help from the Army and the Navy. They helped us dig holes, erect posts. It's more of the technical stuff where you need, the electricians with the stringing of the wires, connecting the cross arms, putting the distribution transformers. So the fastest is really Bayanihan spirit. And it has worked. I'm not sure if any of you here have read the story that there was a village in the northern part of Cebu. The village alone had 52 poles topple. The village within themselves talked to us and said, look, we'll take care of re-erecting our own poles. We have construction companies, they're owners of construction companies. And sure enough, we sent supervisors, and they just started one by one, digging their own holes, re-erecting. And rather than to wait for us as we were scrambling all up the area, they took matters into their own hands, so that by the time we were ready, all the poles were erected already, and then just start stringing it. Mm-hmm. Now, with regards to prioritization, we have a geographic information system that plots our whole franchise area, and it overlays on top of Google Maps. It's a system we co-developed actually with Google. So we can pinpoint where the hospitals are, where the MCWD, Metro Cebu Water District, water pumps are. And at the end of the day, it's really a numbers game, right? We have only X number of crews that can handle X, that can only work X number of hours. So we focus it first really on prioritizing all the hospitals and all the water pumps within Metro Cebu. Once that was done, our next strategy was we divided the franchise into the cities and the municipalities. And each city and each municipality got X number of gangs, and then X number of, we call them sweeper crews. These are the guys that visually go, you have to eyeball the line from the very beginning to the end. And once okay, you can hit the fuse cutout switch to energize the homes. So in the beginning, we were getting a lot of complaints that the street is energized, but there are 3 or 4 houses that don't have power, wanting us to come back. But we have to focus on getting as many people energized as quick as possible. So unfortunately, some might have to suffer a little more time to get re-energized? Because would you rather spend one gang to focus on 4 houses, or that same gang can fix something that can energize 50 houses within the day? Unfortunately, we would choose the 50, right? Because it's a matter of scale, of size. Because we had a target that we focused on getting as many people energized X percentage by a certain date. So that's how it worked out. There were some people that were fortunate enough that lived next to Vicente Soto that got power the next day right after the typhoon. The minute we energized that hospital, people living along that line, they got power right away.
So it pays to be located near that hospital then, huh?
A
Okay.
hospital or a CWD pumps. That's
Yeah, that makes sense. A follow-up question. When you inspect the lines, how feasible is it or how reliable is it to use a set of drones to do that?
You could, and we're eventually looking into that. We've already purchased a few, right? But like I said earlier, 8,990 kilometers, that's a lot of drones.
Yeah, that's a lot of drones. Okay.
So we have people slowly going. You could have like a guy riding a motorcycle with somebody behind, with a flashlight, slowly eyeballing it, or walking with the truck. Different ways.
Yep. Okay. Thanks. Dinky, you had a question, and then I'm going to go to Ronald.
No, I had actually a comment related to what Anton is saying about the prioritization. I think with all the utility companies represented here, each one of them seem to have a pretty good idea of how to approach the restoration of the services in their respective sectors. Now, the problem, I think, is prioritization in terms of areas within an LGU. Because there have been some complaints that certain utility companies or certain neighborhoods get their power back because they are malakas with somebody in that electric company or something like that. Okay. Now I see that as a problem of the LGU not having a proper reconstruction policy. In other words, a policy that would say hospitals, health centers, that's #1 priority, and then pinpointing it. Okay. And then, the kind of businesses that probably also need to be reconstructed or put back into the mainstream as quickly as possible because of the service that they provide. So some kind of a citywide policy for prioritizing the immediate actions that need to be done. Because what I see is that kanya-kanya. The utility companies have their capabilities, but then the LGUs are really scrambling. For example, do you resettle? Do you relocate? Where do you relocate? You need to put up temporary housing. Where do you put temporary housing? So, the preparedness part relating it to the priority requirements of the area. That's what I was thinking, that there needs to be some effort, I think, focused in that respect.
So I guess, Dinky, that effort really needs to be managed by an LGU, by a city.
I think so.
Yeah.
To add to that, we also had after the hospitals and water pumps, we had the list. We had fuel depots, gas stations, hotels without gensets. People that had gensets, we told them, guys, please, you have a genset. We're going to fix the fuel situation. Run your gensets when you can. Let's focus on the establishments that don't have gensets that are also priorities, grocery stores, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great idea, and I'm glad it's enumerated, Anton. Ronald, let me go to you for water. So, I mean, there's a big gap between the very quick response, which is bring bottled water, and then the kind of a rather sophisticated, expensive response, which is bring a treatment plant. What are the in-between options between bottled water and a treatment plant? Is it water tanks? Is it what type of intermediate steps would you recommend that cities take?
Yeah. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, running a water system is not a standalone system. It has to have support from availability of power. Okay, so I would suggest water companies should have a standby power source like generator for them to be able to separate impurities of present in their raw water sources and to become potable, and then for them to be able to pump this water to the network. And during disasters, they need to power up and operate these water treatment facilities that they have, so that they can be able to see where the breakages in their pipe networks are and do the fix immediately. Okay. Deploying a mobile treatment plant is the best solution during calamity response. Basically, it's mobile, so you can just deploy it where the available raw water sources is. And being an MTP, it's like a plug and play equipment. So you just need to install a suction hose and a discharge hose for you to produce drinkable water to your customers. However, designing these mobile treatment plants, normally you design it on the specific water quality that you have in your area. But on the long term, still best for the water companies to come up with more disaster resilient water treatment facilities. Because bottled water is not the solution. It's not the best solution in terms of cost. Say for example, you buy 1 liter of bottled water that costs about 60 pesos, and if you are to convert it, you can get about 2,000 liters of water from the top for the same cost. So you have the luxury of economies of scale if you are to construct your own water treatment facilities with available backup equipment like generator sets.
What about the use of backup facilities like, water tanks that can be used just for in an emergency situation, in the same way that gensets can be on standby for an emergency situation? Does that make sense for cities or neighborhoods?
Yeah, aside from water tanks, you need mobile water tanks and water reservoirs. That will help. But again, for you to be able to distribute the water stored to these facilities for human consumption, you need to operate the water treatment facilities to feed these storage tanks.
Right,
so
right.
First and foremost, you need to ensure that you have a working water treatment facilities for you to be able to have a potable water for distribution to the customers. Then you'll handle the next issue of delivery to the affected citizens.
Okay, thank you. And in water treatment, is it a very complicated process for a typical neighborhood to handle, or is it as simple as installation of water filters which you can change from time to time, and therefore that sounds like a much more easier solution for a neighborhood or for a household?
Yeah. It depends on the raw water quality of the available water source in the community. Say, for example, as I mentioned earlier, we rendered services to a far-flung area in Romblon, wherein we designed a very simple water treatment facility or a rainwater harvesting facility that has its own water treatment capability. And the community is able to operate that simple water treatment facility that they can drink water from after we left the system to them.
Okay, thank you. Rofil, over to you. Okay, so let's say we'll just assume that in really extreme cases, Odette or Yolanda, Ulysses, Raleigh, the big ones, uh, the service is going to be telecom service will be cut off, and it will take some time to restore the service. Uh, would you recommend and how easy is it to deploy satellite phones? I mean, you don't have to deploy so many, but
Yeah.
you would need at least, a satellite phone for an LGU to be able to contact the outside world.
Yep. Bill, actually, during the advent of Odette in the last few weeks of December, we helped our LGU partners, some of our LGU partners who really had no connectivity by providing them with satellite phones. But then again, these satellite phones are also very expensive, very costly, and we only have a limited supply. We could not cater to all partners. So what we did is that to prioritize those areas which really have zero connectivity, zero signal, even for voice and SMS, such as Siargao, Dinagat Islands, and other areas in Visayas. And then eventually found ways to restore connectivity slowly in these areas. So once 2G is up, the basic SMS and voice connectivity are up, you can already do away with satellite phones for now. But I believe our partners, that's a very good point as well, that in the advent of disaster, communication is really very vital. And I would suggest that our local government units already pre-position these satellite phones, whether coming from Globe or from other suppliers, so that they have backup connectivity, backup communication devices in times of these calamities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bill, I'd like to give our experience on satellite phones.
Sure.
They're honestly not the best. We had a number one, if you're inside a building, you can't use it.
Agree.
You can't use
so
it.
whenever in the initial, the day after the typhoon hit, when we were trying to coordinate with our oil plant CPPC, we had to leave the security guards the sat phones so that they were outside. So they would end up being the messenger. So whenever they'd call, they'd be like, just a minute, put the phone, they'd have to walk in, they'd have to get the person, the guy would come outside and talk on the phone. So when I went to the provincial capital speaking with the governor, she had the same thing, and her solution, VHF radios, old school.
Okay, yeah.
That's what she said. She said, I'm going to buy all my barangay captains VHF radios for the next, typhoon, and we're going to go back to old school because that worked even for us.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's a great point. VHF radios. And so Rofil, you mentioned, like, let's say once you get 2G up and running, you don't need to use a satellite phone because you can use 2G. So how much remaining 2G coverage do we have in the country? I mean, should we retain that for emergency purposes?
Of course, Bill, I would still recommend that if you're really prioritizing resiliency, anticipating typhoons and other untoward incident over the next few years, especially now that climate change, there's climate change already, and that our typhoons are getting stronger every year. I would still suggest that each government unit or each organization still have their own backup communication devices, regardless if these are satellite phones or VHF radios, as what Anton has mentioned earlier. But of course, rest assured that everything once there's outage, service disruption in the area, our engineers are readily available to deploy and restore network connectivity. But then it's still best to have a backup communication device for that purpose.
Yeah. Now, let's say, what connectivity is, the connection, the signal is one part of the challenge. The other challenge might be power. No, you've got to charge your phone, and so you've got all these charging stations, but you need power.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know how you power up your charging stations. Is it viable to power up with solar with solar power, or that's not so efficient and you need gensets or a standard electricity connection?
Yep. Currently, Bill, in areas where there's really no power connectivity or power restored yet, our cell sites are running on genset for a few hours, and we also take that opportunity to allow the general public to use the facility through the mobile to charging their devices in established libreng charging stations. So that's a very good point. We can explore solar charging stations in the future because, as you mentioned earlier, as mentioned earlier, we can't just rely purely on generators or gensets because these are not sustainable in the long run. Eventually, it can only help us within the next 3 to 5 hours, but really, in terms of the long-term effect in the environment and towards sustainability, this is also something that's very critical and very important topic that we should discuss.
Yeah. To what extent are your cell sites, the cell sites itself, powered by a combination of electricity traditionally sourced and solar and battery powered?
Right now, Bill, I don't have the exact numbers, but we are already having we have a mix of commercial power at the same time energy efficient devices already. I've mentioned earlier that we are also looking into securing alternative power sources once these are available. So yes, we can share with you offline the exact percentages and if you need specific areas for your information.
Yep, thanks. Dinky, as an urban planner, do you see steps being taken to synchronize on the assumption that we're going to go underground, for more of this cabling and for power and for telecommunications? Do you see a move to synchronize the schedules so that we're not forever digging up the roads?
Bill, we attempted that several years ago in Metro Manila. The problem is that Meralco, Manila Gas, Nawasa at that time, had different budget cycles and the timing of the releases of their funds. And so it was very difficult to synchronize the actual implementation because of the difference in those budget releases, in the timing of the budget releases. And there are, I'm not up to date on what the latest details are on the procurement and contracting requirements now, but that was a difficulty we encountered before. Now, it doesn't that doesn't necessarily mean we can't try and synchronize it, because we did draft an ordinance to synchronize it, because it was really chaos when some agency had just dug up to include a new water pipe and cemented the surface, and then here comes the next utility company and digs up the line because they needed to install another, a different kind of utility line. So it makes sense to synchronize it. It's a matter, I think, of designing the system such that it's not just the planning, but also the budgeting, the financial part of it, so that the actual contracting process can be better synchronized.
Yeah. So, Dinky, do you think, at least for a metropolitan area like Metro Manila, Metro Cebu, Metro Davao, should it be the metropolitan authorities of those areas that can handle that scheduling rather than talk to each component city?
Well,
like
yeah,
Anton, how do you do it in Cebu? Do you talk to just a single body, or do you have to talk to all the different cities?
We talk to the single body, to the Department of DPWH.
Okay.
and then we schedule it with them.
I see. Okay.
You know, Bill, the major government agencies, DPWH, DOTR, you know, NHA, you know, the guys who construct things, they have 5-year plans. Okay, they have 5-year investment programs, and so we know in advance where the projects are, what kind of projects there will be, and supposedly how much they will cost. So it.
Oh, I think we lost Dinky's connection for a minute. While we wait for Dinky, let me go and ask any of the media in the room if they have any questions as well before we close. Just turn on your camera and your microphone, and we'll recognize you and have you ask your question. Anybody from media? Okay, if none, I think we've lost Dinky's connection as well. But in any case, we have run out of time, and I do want to thank all our speakers for joining us today. Veron Gabaldon from PDRF, Anton Predices from Aboitiz Power Distribution Utilities, Ronald Padua from Maynilad, and Rofil Magto from Globe Telecom. Dinky von Einstein, of course, from Assure, part of our Steercom, and Sui Suarez from Aboitiz Power, also part of the steering committee. Before we close, I have just a couple of announcements. One, of course, is that as you exit, you will see a evaluation form automatically appear on your screen. So we'd invite you to fill out the evaluation forms and give us feedback. If you are on Facebook, you'll see a QR code, and just take a picture of the code, and that'll lead you to the feedback form. And again, we'd appreciate your feedback. It allows us to improve on these webinars, on these labs. It also gives you an opportunity to tell us what types of other topics would you like us to cover in a future lab. So this is our crowdsourced way of getting information on what else to cover in the future. But for the moment, let me also then invite you to our next lab. Liveable Cities Lab is going to be on climate resilient water management. So this affordable water quality, for all. And we're doing this in partnership with the UK Embassy, and it's going to be on February 9th. So we will come out with the announcement soon, and the links, and please feel free to join us. No? So again, I'd like to thank our partners who work with us in Liveable Cities. That would be the League of Cities, Globe Telecom, PDRF. Today, of course, again, thanking all the speakers, Veron, Anton, Ronald, and Rofil. So I hope you enjoyed the afternoon. Thank you to the speakers for all the insights and lessons you've given us. I hope this has been useful for the LGUs and for all in the audience. And we look forward to seeing you at our next Liveable City Lab, the one on water, February 9th. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Globe has truly gone beyond telco. We innovate to uplift the lives of Filipinos with compassion, care, and kindness. Driven by our vision and purpose, we address problems of our customers in an inclusive manner that impacts the whole country. We bring together customer-centric innovations into a frictionless digital ecosystem built on a reliable network and supported by genuine caring for our customers. We see this in life-enabling and life-sustaining solutions in education, health, finance, leisurettainment, productivity, business, and digital readiness and security that empower people to live healthier, safer, and richer lives in a progressive digital nation. So, today, we are more than a telco. We are a digital solutions platform. We are the Globe Group.
Aboitiz Power powers progress in the lives of every Filipino every day. We power your homes, your businesses, and your communities in a reliable, cost-efficient, and sustainable way. Over the last century, we have been at the forefront of our country's energy transformation, reimagining sustainability and constantly powering a sustained and inclusive economic growth for our nation. Every day, we will keep the lights on, and every day, we are a step closer to a better future with Aboitiz Power.